All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's around 3 o'clock 53. So I'm very glad that you're here watching this live or as a replay because today I'm going to really tackle something that like nobody's talking about. And yet I think that it's going to be fundamental to how people work and especially how they create wealth and abundance in the new economy. And so it's very exciting because we're going to talk about the the scarcity economy, which is the traditional economy. But now that the internet is here, social media, digital technologies, there is the hope for everyone on the planet to create as much money as they want. But first of all, you have to understand this new abundant digital economy. So, first of all, let's examine the traditional economy so that you can understand the difference between the new economy and the old economy. So if we separate, for example, the two different economies, on the left-hand side, we're going to have, let's say, the old economy, or what I call the scarcity economy. And people are so ingrained in this idea of scarcity. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are afraid. And so this is really based on fear. It could be fear of missing out. It could be fear that you're not good enough. And therefore, for example, some people don't show up. They have knowledge, they have success, but they're so afraid of being rejected. They're afraid of failure. And so they may be successful, they may be rich, but they're still controlled by fear. And so that's what the scarcity is all about. People are afraid of not being able to take care of their families, and therefore they will take any job, just to pay the mortgage. And it's the fear of, like, single people, for example, are afraid of missing out, and they live in this state of perpetual anxiety because they're single. But anyways, let's not go there, because here we're going to talk more about work, money, finance, not so much about relationships. So this is the scarce economy, and I would even call it the scare city. So most people, including rich people, they live in the city called the scare city. They're afraid. They're contracting. They're not very creative, because when you have anxiety, you eliminate creativity. You tend to blame, judge, criticize. So this is the scarcity economy. And it is so bad that very smart people, Elizabeth Holmes, Sam Bankman-Fried, Bernie Madoff, like even, what's his name? Epstein. All these people are super smart, super rich, but they're so scared that they're hoarding their assets and resources. So in a nutshell, this is a scarcity economy, and you don't want to be in that economy, because once you understand what I'm going to be talking about here, you want to shift to a new economy. But the problem is that most people do not realize that there is another economy that is right beside the scarcity economy. So I would call it the abundant economy, for lack of a better word. And this economy is based on love, based on joy, based on sharing. Okay, this is very important. Based on transformation, especially self-transformation. So it's not going to be that easy. It is simple, like a child could do it, but it seems complex to play in this abundant economy. It seems complex only because our ego are complex and our belief system is so rigid. All right. So here we have a very rigid belief system. It's so rigid, for example, that even very smart, very successful people like Warren Buffett or Jamie Dimon, the founder and CEO of JP Morgan. How do you is that right? Jamie Dimon? Yeah. So even Jamie Dimon, these people didn't believe in Bitcoin, but nowadays, like Jamie Dimon, for example, JP Morgan, they are putting up Bitcoin as collateral. So they have no choice but to embrace Bitcoin. Same thing with Warren Buffett and other rich people. But there are people, who were able to change their mind. For example, Michael Saylor, he was a critic of Bitcoin in 2000, I think 11 or 12, and after that he turned around, and since 2022 he became the chief proponent of Bitcoin. So it is possible to change your mind, and what's happening is that when you change your mind, when you change your rigid belief system, your life is going to change. So I don't know about your situation right now, but if you're struggling in some way with money, then you have to shift from this economy to a new economy. It's almost like a new world. It's a different worldview, okay? And it's like you don't understand this new world. You don't understand this abundant economy. You don't understand the joy, the excitement that people in this economy, they feel unless you've stepped into it. And so it requires that you actually go from this world to another world. And it's not easy because for the most part, what's happening is that people don't even see this new world that I'm talking about. It's like as if there's a cover and they just don't see it. The only thing they see is the scarcity economy. Like even people who believe in Bitcoin, which is great. I agree, it's great. They don't realize that Bitcoin is also scarcity based. And when I say scarcity, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bad thing. It's the wrong mindset. So there is a case for right and wrong here. You have to be, you have to have judgment. You cannot stay away from right or wrong, or some would say suboptimal. Bitcoin, the scarcity mindset is wrong because there's so much in life, in nature, so much that of your economic and financial potential. Anyways, my point is that Bitcoin is scarcity based because there's ever going to be only 21 million Bitcoins. And so this is like saying that, in the world there's 8 billion people, but there's ever going to be only like 1 million pieces of bread, which is crazy. Like, how are you going to feed people, 8 billion people, when you have only 1 million pieces of bread? So to me, it's the same thing. Bitcoin is a great innovation because, it's going to preserve your wealth in the long term. It's not vulnerable to inflation, but Bitcoin is not the end game. It's a step. And so a lot of Bitcoin believers and holders, they don't understand yet that Bitcoin is scarcity based. They do understand that the value of Bitcoin is based on its scarcity, right? And so cryptocurrencies, any asset that is limited and that you cannot share, they are part of the scarcity economy. So let's look at the other asset classes. And by the way, guys, I know that not all of you are investors or not all of you have financial training, but don't worry, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. But it's important to understand financial concepts so that you know what the economy is all about. The scarcity economy. This is really a bad economy, and I'm not shy about saying it's bad or it's wrong, because you have to judge ultimately. If you're afraid of words like right or wrong, then you can say something like, it's not an economy for me. If you're the kind of person who doesn't want to say something is right or wrong, I'm not that kind of person. If this is wrong, I'm gonna put it in red. It's wrong, and you shouldn't be here. And this is what I tell my nieces and nephews, whoever wants to listen. I'm not imposing. I'm just telling you exactly what I see. I've read like over 1,000 business books. Well, not all business, but they're all nonfiction books. I've studied this for the last 30 years, and this is my conclusion. And it's my conclusion. This is how I see it. I don't have to impose my beliefs on anyone, but I just want to share with you if it resonates with you, if it helps you to think more clearly and to make more money and have more abundance, which is what I have in my life right now. I have freedom. I don't have to work anymore. Then, you can apply and you can see the results for yourself. You don't have to totally believe in the abundant economy the way that I believe in it. You just have to be a little bit willing to explore and not close your mind to what's going on in the abundant economy here. I'm going to put it in blue. And so these are two radically different thought systems. Okay, this is something we have to acknowledge. They're radically different in the sense that if you believe in one, you cannot believe in the other. Okay, so these are two radically different belief system. And so what's happening is that if you have a belief system that is favoring, that is, focusing on the scarcity economy, every time that somebody will try to help you, right away it's going to bounce off of your belief system, because this is a really highly integrated, self-reinforcing belief system. You can have like the Pope, you can have the Dalai Lama, you can have Warren Buffett, you can have like Elon Musk. They will try to help you, but they send you ideas, and right away it's going to bounce off your belief system. This is your belief system. Your belief system about the scarcity economy is so strong that it's not possible for anyone to penetrate that belief system. It's almost like in Star Trek, the race shields. It's like people can send photons to shoot photons at your belief system, but it's going to bounce off because your belief system is so strong. It's so strong. But what happened in my case, I'm going to share with you very humbly, very vulnerably, is that there came a point, and it's probably going to be something similar in your case or in the case of a lot of people out there who are financially struggling. There came a point where I had no choice but to stop believing in this belief system, and I have no choice but to search for a new belief system. And that's when I discovered the abundant economy a couple of years ago. And that's why my life today is very much based on passion, love, joy, sharing, not just trading, and transformation. And I'm transforming myself in the 4 key areas of life. And so, but to get to this point where you live in an abundant world, you have to change your belief system, because these are two radically different belief systems. You can consider these two belief systems to be like the opposite sides of a coin. So as long as you're focusing on one side of the coin, so let's say we have a shape, let's see. So you have a coin like this, and right now maybe the only thing you see is scarcity. And of course you're scared, right? You're scared that you're going to lose your job because there's a limited number of jobs. It's all about scarcity. Because obviously there is a limited number of jobs, and chances are, because of AI, they're not going to create more jobs for young people. So it's a real objective thing, but you have to somehow switch the flip and switch to the other side where you can actually see the abundance. But as long as you're on this side, you're only going to see scarcity, right? So you have to really flip to the other side, and then you can see the abundance here. And when I say abundance, like, guys, I really mean abundance. Like, I used to teach at Taft College from 2017 to 2022. I was making $80 an hour. But even for me, some people might say, wow, that's good money. You're just teaching, right? Yeah, I'm just teaching. I'm just telling jokes. And if you ask my students, I'm telling stories and jokes. I'm trying to entertain them. I was more like a entertainer. So it was not really working, So I'm being paid $80 an hour just to entertain young people. But $80 an hour for me, it's nothing. $800 an hour, it's nothing. I want like $8,000 an hour, like really. And I don't even want to work per hour. I want $8,000 per 0 hour of work. That's possible with the abundant economy. And so, like I said, it's really two sides of the same coin. And unless and until you realize that, your life is probably not going to change. So always think that it's two sides of the same coin. And right now you are living in scarcity, including rich people, including Bitcoin people who may think that they're very, very advanced. But and from my standpoint, they're still operating within the scarcity economy. They're still trying to make better trades, better decisions. But that's not, that's not the end game. Okay. But again, I'm not saying that the scarcity economy or Bitcoin is bad in itself. It's really just a step, but you got to go higher. So, you always need to go higher. So let me just show you here. So Bitcoin is over here, but it's like a stairway. You always need to go higher. And, you start with the scarcity economy. You start with Bitcoin and other asset classes, but you got to go up. You got to go up. You cannot just stay, in your Bitcoin world, or if you're in real estate, you can't just stay in it. You have to make progress and head toward the abundant economy. Okay, so let me first just talk about the traditional asset classes so that we know what we're talking about here. So the scarcity economy, the value comes from scarcity, right? So scarcity will create value. And of course, because the value goes higher, the prices will go up. So the value of any asset is dependent on how limited it is. So we have traditional asset classes, and I call them tax traditional asset classes. And these will be things like, let me just make a copy here. Traditional asset classes that all investors know. So let me just name them. You have the most robust, you have real estate, residential or commercial houses, condominiums, etc. You have gold, you have government bonds and corporate bonds. You have commodities, wheat, cattle. You have shares in a publicly traded company or shares in a privately held company. You have, silver. You might have various metals. I'm not really familiar. Rare earth, for example. You have, of course, you have Bitcoin, and then you have other cryptocurrency. I used to hold Solana and Chainlink and Cardano, but I just left them. I just focus on Bitcoin. So I'm a small investor in Bitcoin myself. So I'm not, I'm not saying that you should sell off your Bitcoin. But the important thing to understand is that there is a new asset classes, and we have to, consider and study what they are if we are to benefit from these new asset classes. And I call them TICs. It's just a convenient handle or acronym. And TICs is where you're going to make enormous wealth if you understand what they are. Okay, so let me just put it down as my claim, my chief premise. This is you, like any ordinary person like you and I, where you can create enormous wealth and abundance for yourself and your family. So think about your kids, okay? Think about your kids, think about your family, your wife, etc. This is where you can make significant headway in achieving financial abundance, financial freedom, anything that you want, a house, a car, a beautiful woman, a handsome husband, anything that you want, kids, designer clothes, anything you want is going to come from TIC. So TICs really stands for technologies, and this is just a handle, it's just a broad category. I'm going to delve into greater detail later on, but it's technologies, information, knowledge, and communication. So I'm going to talk more about these three broad categories, but I'm putting them here so that you can see very clearly the difference between the two. And of course, this is really, really a big separation between the two. And, you cannot really underestimate the extent to which people's belief system will literally prevent them. It prevents them from seeing the right hand side. Like very successful investors, whether it's Warren Buffett, Michael Saylor, who's investing in Bitcoin, whether it's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, all these successful people, Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he is, they're really focusing on the traditional asset classes. They're not really focused on TIC. There are billionaires who are focusing on TICs, and you know them. There's a Mark Cuban who became a billionaire after he created a company in the 1990s, broadcast.com. where he was able to live stream audio programs through the internet. There's Oprah, also a billionaire, and famously known for her TV show and magazine. So her TV show was licensed and broadcast through Harpo, her media company, and she was empowering like tens and even hundreds of millions of women worldwide. So she's using the power of media. Mark Cuban's the power of the internet or streaming on the internet. You have other people like Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber. You have, what's his name? Brian Chesky, the founder and CEO of Airbnb. So I can go on because I've been studying these billionaires for a long time. I don't, my goal is to become a billionaire. Like, it's like going to Mars as opposed to going to the moon where you just become a millionaire. So I've been studying these guys, these women, and I noticed that there's a difference between these billionaires and the billionaires that we see here in the scarcity economy. So this is the abundant economy, the infinite economy, if you will. So the problem with the traditional asset classes is that they're traditional, they're limited. They're not taking into consideration the new technologies, including AI. They're not taking into consideration the value of information or the value of communications, including social media. They're largely operating in traditional industries. And so you have, very rich and powerful people. Oh yeah, I'm just going to put here Ted Turner. He's the founder of CNN. CNN, by the way, was created in 1980, but they lost money for 5 years and they were only profitable in 1985 with a net profit of $13 million. So I have detailed files on all these billionaires. So anyways, let's get back to traditional billionaires here. You have Rupert Murdoch. You have people who have made money from real estate mostly, and from shares in publicly traded company. You have Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. Although I have to point out that people think that Walmart, it makes money because they have low prices, but that's not true. It's because they have an IT system and logistics that would make everything efficient. So the success of Walmart depends greatly on information technology. And so I'm going to talk more about this later on, but basically Walmart is selling physical products. So that's why I put them in the traditional asset classes here. So nothing wrong with these people who have made like a lot of money from real estate, from gold, from trading shares, from trading options. There's also Forex, where you're trading currencies and you're benefiting from arbitrage, meaning that you buy the US dollar or the British pound at a certain price, you buy low and you sell high. So famously, what's his name? Soros. What's his first name? I'm drawing a blank. Must be Alzheimer. It's not Charles Soros. George Soros. Yeah. So he made money with that. You have real estate. Robert Allen and like even Donald Trump, right, made money with real estate. And so for these asset classes, I don't know, but every time you see a billionaire, they probably made money with traditional asset classes. And again, nothing wrong with that. Okay. There's of course my favorite, Ray Dalio, because he wrote the book Principles. Everyone should read that book. Extremely wise, extremely practical. But Ray became a billionaire because he's he runs a hedge fund, the largest hedge fund according to one metric, called Bridgewater and Associates, and fascinating. Ray Dalio is a kind man, a wise man. His advice is sought by head states all over the world. So he's one of the few traditional billionaires that I really admire because of his wisdom. But you have other, people here. Could be Jeff Bezos. Although I'm not sure. I think Jeff Bezos belongs more in this camp because, Amazon is really internet based. And so my point is that when you study rich people, billionaires, and you should, right? Because if you don't study these billionaires, or you could study millionaires as well, it means that subconsciously you're telling your mind, I'm never going to become rich. And therefore, what is the point of studying billionaires? So just by studying these billionaires, I've been able to make a lot of money and create new businesses and projects and products that I would normally, not come up with. And so I'll talk more about that. But the important thing here is that you have to understand that there are two different financial categories, if you will: the traditional asset classes, and this is what we all know, and then there's the new asset classes focused on technologies, information, knowledge, communication, social media. And I guess because I like analogies, I like to offer simple examples that will show people like the difference between these two. And again, I'm very much into drawing distinctions. And so some people might shy away from saying this is right, this is wrong. I don't, because what I've learned from Tony Robbins in his book Awaken the Giant Within, he said that successful people, especially highly successful people, they have the skill where they can focus on distinctions. They know the key distinctions. Distinctions are basically sharp classification or sharp definition that enable you to judge, evaluate between two or more than two options, and then select the right one. So there is right and wrong. So I'm saying that this is wrong and this is right. And so I am intellectually confident enough to tell people, look, if you're here in the scarcity economy, you're afraid of missing out. And for example, even AI, a lot of people get into AI out of fear and not out of love. You're not creative. You have a rigid belief system. That's wrong. That's suboptimal. And so what I teach my students and clients and more through live streams like this one, I want to help them to make the transition from the scarcity economy here to the abundant economy. This is where you want to be. This is not that different, by the way, from how my own father became a self-made millionaire in the 1950s in Vietnam. Because so I'm going to talk about my father a little bit. What he did, which I thought a lot about, because what I do is that I study rich and successful people, and I go up the abstraction ladder in order to identify exactly like how were they able to become successful. So what my father did was that in the 1950s, I think around 1954, Vietnam was cut into half because of not the Geneva, I think the Versailles agreement or accord. And so there was this thing called South Vietnam where it was more like pro-Western. It was supported by United States, and there's this thing in Hanoi in the South called South Vietnam. So when they divided the Vietnam into two sections, North and South, they gave people like a few months to move. So anyone who's not aligned with socialist and communist the regime in South Vietnam, which is backed by, I think, China and Russia. I'm not sure. I have to verify that, but it was a socialist country. Ho Chi Minh, for example, the socialist leader. People had like a couple of, months to move, and if you don't move to to South Vietnam and start over your new life, then you're going to be stuck in the old socialist uh, part of Vietnam. And so what my father did was brilliant, because he basically created a taxi company that helped people with transportation. And as you can imagine, in those days, there was no buses, there was no metro system. Today in Vietnam, I think in Saigon, which is now called Ho Chi Minh City, there is a metro system. But in the 1950s, there was no, buses, no metro, and so I think no train. And so what my father did, I have to ask my mom the name of the company, but he created a taxi company. And of course, people would hop on a taxi. It's not that expensive. It's very convenient. And so they can move around. So it was a time in the 1950s of a lot of moving around. And so he started a taxi company. And what he did, which is very inspiring to me, like he took like old cars, and he had a friend who was a mechanic, and they would, refurbish the car and really fix it and paint it so that it becomes a polished taxi car. And he had like a fleet of like about 100 cars, and he would rent out those cars to the taxi drivers, and they were making so much money in those days that after a month or two, they were able to buy the car. And then after that, they were working for my father as a driver. And so he made a fortune, how? By just helping people, to move from the from the north to the south. And it's just moving bodies. Okay. He was moving bodies from the North Vietnam down to the south. And that's how he made a smart fortune. And he bought real estate. He bought like 3 or 4 houses, diamonds, lands, any asset that is really valuable. And so, I, in a similar manner to my father, I want to help people to move from the, from an area in the world where you're not making a lot of money because it's almost like socialist. And I want to help people to move to the new world, the new abundant economy, going from left to right. So that's what I want to help you with in this live stream. I know that many people, including my successful and multimillionaire friends who are investors, they're going to have strong resistance because they're going to see this as an attack on their belief system. But it's not an attack because, like I said, I myself, I'm a small investor in Bitcoin. So I knew everything about Bitcoin in 2016. I spent a month, watching all the videos on Bitcoin. And so I'm not attacking really, but I'm just saying, look, you have a choice now between the scarcity and the abundant economy. Okay. And I guess what one quote that I can share with you to really summarize the difference between these two economy, it comes from Robert G. Allen, who's a successful multimillionaire. You can check him out. I read a book. I think he wrote Multiple Sources of Income. Highly recommend that book. It's going to open your eyes to your economic and financial potential. But anyways, Robert Allen said something very interesting. I think it's worth noting. So it's an order of magnitude. Most